Okay, welcome to 10 minutes or so of a lesson on the Torah portion of the week. So we're beginning again. Parshat Beraishit. We're beginning the book of Genesis. We just came away from a whole huge holiday season, and we now start the Torah all over again. We start with Beraishit, Genesis. So the book of Genesis begins with the letter Beis, with a bet. And we ended off on Simchat Torah, and over last Shabbat we ended with the last word in the Torah was a lamed. So if you put the base and the lamed together, you get lave, and it's about the heart. And I think one of the things that I'd like to pull out from this week's Torah portion, amongst the many things there are to talk about, is the concept of relationships, and the relationship that God wants to have with his creation, with us, with the ultimate of creation, which is mankind, and the relationship that we have not only with God, but that we have with each other. And so this week's Torah portion begins with the creation of the world. We have to learn about the creation of the world. We don't start our Torah with the first commandments. We don't start with the stories of our patriarchs. We start with the creation of the world, and we zip through it. This week's Torah portion is a fast-paced creation of the world. In 7 days, God created the world, and he created mankind. And I want to dwell on the language that is used for creation of man. There are two stories of the creation of man. One is that God created male and female together and separated them. And the other is God created Adam, man, from the ground, from the earth, and he blew into mankind, a nefesh chayim, a living soul. He blew from his essence, from God's essence came, so to speak, our life, our soul was breathed into us. And from the original Adam came Havel, his soulmate, his helpmate, Eve. So there are two stories of creation of mankind. But it says, in the Torah, it says, let us make man. And many of the commentators ask, what does it mean, let us? Who's the us that God is asking? Who is he consulting with to create mankind? And there are many answers. And I'm going to pull out maybe three or four. First one is that God consulted with the earth. He's going to create man from the earth. Man is from the earth. So there's an earthly existence, a materialism that is who we are. And then there's this soul that God breathes into us. So God consulted with the earth. Let us together, the earth and godliness together are mankind. So that was one of the first answers that I saw that I really liked. The second one is that he consults with the angels. He consults with all of creation before he created the ultimate, the pinnacle of creation, mankind, that he consulted with all of creation. He consulted with the angels. And from this we learned, quote unquote, the humility of God and that's a lesson for us. It's a lesson for us to learn that when we make decisions or when we have an idea or when we do something, we need to consult with other people. We need to consult with all people, not just people like above us or on the same level of us, but maybe even people who in our minds seem lower or people who have a different perspective. We should be consulting with other people to get the input of how to proceed in our lives. So that's another commentator's understanding of this term, let us make man. Thirdly, let us make man. God is consulting with the other attributes, with the 13 attributes of God. We learned when we spoke about Yom Kippur, that God has 13 attributes, 13 character traits that he taught to Moses, and that we use on Yom Kippur as a sort of almost like a ticket, a get out of jail card free on some level. If we say these 13 attributes of God, that we can cleanse ourselves and we can be forgiven. So these 13 attributes are the ways in which God acts in the world, and God consulted with all of those attributes. All of those attributes came into play when God created mankind. It was a fantastic idea. We talked previously about the midot, about the sphirot, about the divine emanations and how they filter into this existence. And God consulted with all of those. All of those are part and parcel of who we are. We have those attributes also. We are created in the image of God, meaning that we also have those attributes. We also have the capacity to be godlike. We're not like the animals that have only impulse and only instinct, and we're not like the angels that are only doing the will of God. We're in between. We're a mixture of animal and angel. We're a mixture of physical and spiritual, and so we have free will, and we get to choose who we are and how we create ourselves in this world. And that leads me to the final answer, which the Zohar speaks about, which is that when God said, let us make man, he's consulting with mankind, with the man that he's creating. He's saying, God is saying, you also, mankind, have to make yourself. I'll create you. I'll put you into this world. I'll give you this divine soul. I'll give you the world to live in. But you are partners with me, and your role is to partner with me and to create yourself. You also are part and parcel of creating yourself. We're not passive players in this world. We're actively working on ourselves, creating ourselves so that we can birth ourselves into the next world. So let's really think about what that means to create ourselves as we journey through life. So Adam was the first created being. And as I said, there were two narratives of how Adam was created. He was created male and female and was then separated. Or he was created from the ground, Adam, from the Adama, from the earth, and God blew into him a living soul. And that living soul then is described as a speaking being. We are speaking. We're the only animals, the only creation, that speak, that have ideas, that have visions, that have thoughts, that can communicate with speech. So when God created the world, which we learn about in this week's Torah portion, he created the world with 10 utterances, with his language. God said, let there be light, let there be. And through the language, creation was created. So too, we create with our language. And God says to Adam, you get to name all the animals. All of the animals are going to pass by you, and you're going to name them all. And Adam names all the animals, and he sees, he has insight into the nature of the animal and the essence of the animal, and he names them. And he also names himself. He names himself Adam. He names himself Adam because he knows where he comes from, and he wants to, so to speak, some of our commentators suggest that he wants to make sure that he stays humble, that he recognizes that he comes from the earth and will return to the earth. And so when he names himself Adam, he's recognizing from where he comes and how lowly he is. So there's a humility in him naming himself Adam. He names all the animals, and finally he names his helpmate. He names his soulmate. He names her Havel, which is an amazing thing. He names her after her role, which is that she's the source of life. Chai. Like she brings life into the world, and he recognizes that she is different than he is, that she has a different role in the world than he does. And he recognizes that, and he has an awareness of that, and he sees the difference between him and her. And he names her according to her role in the world, that she is the source of life, that life will come from her, which is an amazing thing to think about, that these are the first two human beings, and that he could see that she was different than him. And so too, we must see that we are different from each other, and we must recognize the other and see the other and give voice to the other and praise the other and build up the other. So that's an interesting way to think about what Adam was doing when he named her Havel, that he's recognizing that she's different and applauding her and praising her and staying in relationship with her, even after the eating from the tree of good and knowledge of good and evil, and they get expelled and they get exiled. But he calls her Havel because she is the source of life. He's harping on the good in her, and not that she led him astray and gave him the fruit, etc., but that she is the source of life in the world, that together they'll partner and they'll bring children into the world. And they bring into the world Cayenne and Havel. They bring into the world Cain and Abel. And this is where the first murder comes in. We have the first murder between Cayenne and Havel. So Cayenne kills Havel because when they brought offerings to God, God rejected the offering that Cayenne brought and accepted the offering that Havel brought. And either it was jealousy, or either it was like a despondency and despair that he couldn't create the relationship with God. And it says in the Torah that he wanted to say something to Havel, but it doesn't tell us what he says. And perhaps he didn't have the language. He couldn't use his language in an effective way. He couldn't communicate with Havel how he felt. And so he resorted to anger and jealousy, and he killed his brother. First murder in the Torah. Whereas, go back to Adam and Eve, when they were first created, take the first story where they're created male and female together, separated, and then they talk to each other, and they're in relationship with each other, and they use their words to communicate with each other. How amazing is that? So let's sort of see this as a very fundamental aspect of who we are as humans, that we have the capacity to create and destroy with our language. Adam and Eve created relationships between themselves through their language, and Cayenne and Havel destroyed their relationship by not using language appropriately, by miscommunicating with each other, by not using their words to effectively create relationship. But it was a miscommunication and a destructive relationship that they had with each other. They were unable to use their words to connect themselves to each other. So the last thought in this 10 minutes is, when God creates all the world, he creates everything all at once. Everything's all in potential. In the very first moment of creation, everything's created in potential. And we learn from the Medrash that when Adam was created, he prays for rain. And when the rain comes, then the rain brings forth the herbage and the trees and the grasses that are waiting. They're all there in potential. But God set the system up that the rain would only come, the rain would only come with Adam praying for the rain. So here we have a communication between us and God. So we pray and we communicate with God. We talk to God and we have a relationship with God, just like we learned about Adam and Eve having a relationship with each other that was functional and beautiful and good and close. And now we're looking to have a relationship with God. So we're praying to God, we're talking to God, and not just out of the Siddur and not just using the words that are given to us, but with using our own words and using our own emotions and using our own feelings, that we bring that to the equation. And at the point where God creates Havel out of the side of Adam, God says in this week's Torah portion, it is not good for man to be alone. God also recognizes the needs of mankind, his creation. He understands what we need. We have a capacity for existential loneliness. And so God says in the Torah, don't be alone. Create relationships. It's important for you, the human being, to be in meaningful and close and loving and beautiful relationships with each other, and you have to do that. That's in your hands to create for yourself. So when we learn about Parshat Beraishit, and Beraishit is the creation of the world. Beraishit is the beginning. God creates beginnings. God creates mankind. God created this whole world, and God is looking for a relationship with us. We in return should be looking for a relationship with God. We're looking for a relationship with each other, and through our language and through how we are in this world, we will do that. So going back to the sentence where it says, "Let us create man." Let us create man. The language is na'aseh. The word is na'aseh for that's in that sentence, na'aseh. And we say those same words when we're at Mount Sinai and we're going to accept the Torah. We say na'aseh v'nishma. We'll do it and then we'll understand it. So part of our job, a very big job that we have in this world, is to create ourselves. And the na'aseh language is, I'm going to create myself by connecting myself to God through learning the wisdom in the Torah, by attaching myself to the source of all life, and the source of all life is God. So I bless us that we should be able to take the energy from the holiday season, all of those holiday seasons that we've just come out of, as we begin the Torah again, as we begin to read about creation, we begin to look into the Garden of Eden and see the relationship that Adam and Eve had with God, and how they were exiled, and how we're searching and yearning to get back into that relationship with God. And we can do it, we can do it in this COVID world where we're sequestered away. Perhaps we have a little bit more time to think, we have a little bit more time to go inside, and we have a little bit more time to create more meaningful relationships with each other. And I bless us that we should achieve that.